Hey guys, now my original plan was to do this video in a park near where I am here. I'm just in a pub over in Balmain. I've been riding all afternoon. It's my quarterly strategy day, and I was going to shoot a video for you in this park, but the wind was blowing a gale. Now they reckon the winds have been about 37 k's an hour according to the app on my phone, and when I got down there you could hear the wind whistling through the sails and the yachts that were moored down the water, just like this. When it would have been terrible for acoustics, so we had to change plans, but not to worry, it actually fits in with today's theme, and I was going to just share a quick word with, especially with you young entrepreneurs watching, just about changing plans and not giving up on the dream but being adaptable. Now you'll see that I posted a link to an article that I wrote recently, and in it I talk about, if you didn't know, my dream was to be a Formula 1 world champion when I was a kid. I wanted to be the next Australian Formula 1 world champion. I wanted to go down the history books, and that was the dream. And you can call it childish naivety, but I thought it was destiny, because when I went and raced hire karts, I'd pretty much always win. You know, I'd even beat adults who had their full driver's license, and you know, whenever I'd race, like, people would come up afterwards and they'd ask me for driving tips. I was fast, and you know, there was a random guy who was watching me drive once, and he said to Mum that he said, "Oh, you know, you should think about getting him racing full time in karts. He's got the gift." Look, even if he had made that up, even if that was a story that Mum made up to make me feel better, like I said, other people would come up, strangers would come up afterwards, and they'd talk about how fast I was, and they'd ask for my advice, and so I thought that was my destiny, you know. But then a bunch of things happened. I got older, and I didn't have the funds to compete at the level that I wanted to, and so my original plan was to give it away for a while. I was going to go into cartooning, animation, that sort of thing, which was something else I specialised in, and I was going to come back to racing, but that didn't happen. So keep in mind that while all this was going on, and I was going through my teenage years, I'd never even heard of copywriting. You know, 20 years ago I would never have guessed that I'd be sitting right here right now doing this video. I mean, iPads didn't exist back then, but I had no idea this would happen 20 years ago. Now, meanwhile, on the other side of the world, there's another kid, same age as me, had the same dream as me to become a Formula 1 driver one day, and for him, that dream manifested. That dream came true for him. The name of that kid is Lewis Hamilton, and if you follow Formula 1 at all, or chances are that even if you don't follow Formula 1, you know that he's a multi-Formula 1 world champion. He's doesn't want for money or for any of the material success or the fame that comes with being at the top of your game in F1. But what stood out to me more recently, and this is where it gets interesting, what stood out to me recently is that I read this article from the Australian Formula 1 driver, Daniel Ricciardo, and he was talking about Lewis, and he said that apparently Lewis is not struggling, but he's not sure of his purpose, wondering what his purpose is a bit. And he said something along the lines of, you know, from a young age, Lewis has been exposed to the fame and the pressures that come with competing at the highest level like that, and so you have to adjust to that. You'd have to get used to that a bit. And see, when I read this, I had just started temping for a company down in Sydney, and I was doing something that a few years ago I never thought I would do, which was, you know, even though it was temporary, go full time into the workforce. But there I was doing that, and it just felt surreal to me, because here I am reading about a guy who, you know, was living the dream that I wanted to live back, you know, 20 years ago, back when I was a kid. But here he is wondering what his purpose is, and it felt strange to read that. And again, the link is in the article. The link to that article itself is in the article that I wrote about, so you can take a look for yourself. But it was just, yeah, it was kind of surreal, because I don't worry about that, you know. Like, if you told me when I was a kid that I would never become Formula One world champion, let alone even compete, let alone even make the grid, you know, I would have been devastated. I would have wondered what my purpose was. But you get older and your perspective changes, and now here I am out for a bike ride, and I didn't film this in the location that I originally wanted to, but that's okay. It's a nice pub here. For those of you wondering, it's the Cooper and Son. Well, it's Cooper and Sons is the sign, but it's kind of beside the point. Now, I made this video. I wanted to make this video for the same reason I wrote the article, because I know that there are those of you watching who are younger entrepreneurs. So, as a general rule, sort of in your 20s, and I don't know why you're building your business. I don't know why you are an entrepreneur, but I don't know what the basis for going into this game was for you. But if your dreams are mostly focused on, you know, making X amount of dollars, or being well known, or having these connections, or living this lifestyle, there's a series of questions that you should ask yourself. I mean, this is a good time to ask. We're coming into the last few weeks of this decade. So, how do you want the next 10 years to look? Do you want to find yourself in your 30s wondering what your purpose is, or do you want to be content? Not to say that there's not going to be difficulties. I mean, it doesn't matter what career you choose. You know, you could be delivering newspapers, which I've done. You could be pushing trolleys, which I've done back in the day just to make an extra buck when I was young in the school holidays. You're always going to have problems. So it's just a case of what problems can you live with, and if you end up if you're making good money, if your job's paying well, is that a bonus or is that compensation? But look, there's 5 questions there for you to ask yourself, to take the time out and to ask yourself. And if you're a young entrepreneur, you're never going to have a better time to do this. You know, don't waste the next 5 years, 10 years, 25 years going down a wrong path, just trying to fulfill a dream that you had when you were a kid and that you maybe outgrew. Because I know for me, I mean, yeah, I love race driving. You know, I love racing go-karts, and I still do watch the F1 and the V8s, that sort of stuff. But when I was a kid, the reason that I wanted to be F1 world champion, the reason I wanted to do that was because I wanted the recognition. You know, I wanted to feel like I was somebody. I wanted to feel appreciated and valued, and I thought that was how I was going to do it. It was really, more than anything else, it was just an answer to the childhood insecurities that I had, and it turns out it wasn't the answer. So here I am now, all these years later, and much like this video, much like the original filming location for this video, the original plan didn't come true, but you know, I look at people for who that plan did come true, and maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be. And I think that there's an Oscar Wilde quote, which I included in the article as well, that basically there's 2 great tragedies that happen in any person's life, and one is not getting what you want, and the other one is getting it. My dream could have come true, but I might have realised all too late that it wasn't really fulfilling the answer that I hoped it would. And that could have been the greatest tragedy of all, to have got to this point so far along in my career and to realise that this wasn't going to be it. So I'll leave that with you today, guys, but go ahead and take a look through the article, and definitely make time to just sit down and to ask yourself those 5 questions that I've laid out for you in that article. But tell us what you think. And again, if you know anybody who's themselves a young entrepreneur, and maybe they're questioning whether they're the thing that they're persevering in is something worth continuing with, share this video with them. And if you haven't had the good foresight to subscribe yet, go ahead and do that. And you can do that as soon as this video finishes. But share this video with anybody you think it could benefit. I'm going to take a bit more of a breather and then continue with this afternoon's ride. You guys take care of yourselves, and I'll chat to you all again in the very near future. Catch you later.